Welcome to, wrong one.
Ooh.
Hey, welcome to the Cult Bar, folks. So, yeah, we gonna have a fun show this week. It'll be interesting as it always is. So, yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
so why don't we, Renee? Why don't you start with our trigger warnings because we always need to lay those out for
Oh, yeah.
everybody.
Um, Another long one. We always have long ones. So, trigger and content warning for abusive relationship, including emotional and financial abuse, spiritual abuse, as always, talk of dietary restriction, addiction, questions of sexual assault or abuse. And then we also have a trigger warning for news. It's going to involve Nazis and racism. So, it's going to be like, the happiest episode we've ever
Yeah, kind
done.
of standard fare. So yeah, I would also like to point out that this isn't classically a cult as we normally have explored,
Right?
but exhibits all the cult-like behavior, and it just relates basically not just to two people because a bunch of people are affected, but two people are the main focus. I
Mhm.
would say. So yeah. So before we jump into that, would you like to start with some news?
All right. So, this one this one's a weird one, or maybe not surprising at all. This We're actually talking about the mainstream Latter Day Saints, the mainstream Mormon Church. Uh, Whether you consider them a cult or not depends a lot on what your experience with Mormons has been. So that's my disclaimer, I guess. But anyway, there's a new book coming out called Moroni and the Swastika: Mormons in Nazi Germany, and it turns out Um, prior to the Third Reich, Mormon missionaries could theoretically be in Germany, but they had to pretend to be other things. Um, and then when Hitler took over, they really wanted to know who had Jewish lineage, and Mormons are really good at genealogy. So, in order to get access to the genealogy, they went in for the Third Reich. And this book explores that. It also explores the fact that the 12th article of faith, which, if you have like more in-depth knowledge of the Mormon Church, basically it says you obey the government. That had been done away with. It got brought back for this purpose. And there is a lot of intense stuff just in the article about the book. And it is coming out soon. Oh, it
So
says
this is the
February 26th. So I'm looking at yeah, I'm not able to find.
not officially out until February 26th. I don't know if that's
Yeah. So
I'm
this is actually, I'm sorry, it's not news. It was news to me. Ha!
news to me too.
Yeah, so it's a few years old. You can get it now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I read this and I was pretty like I said, not shocked. If you know a little bit about Mormon's history with race, it's not shocking. It's just not great. And that's the news. The book covers how pro-Nazi German Mormons were and how the Mormon Church went along with that to cover for the German Mormons that came to the US and used it for other crappy purposes. And I think whether you are an active member of the Mormon Church, you're an ex member, or you're just curious, there's going to be some information in there that's worth knowing.
Yeah. So you you said that to me, and I was initially like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that unfortunately kind of tracks."
Yeah. Uh,
uh,
yeah. I mean, that was me too. It was like, oh, this is like a horrific headline, but also very normal kind of news from these particular people.
yeah, unfortunately so. Hooray! So before we start our show, let's talk a little bit about what's our drink. What do you have?
I have a Golden Road street cart. I've had their other carts before. I've never had this one. It's really good. It's a lime and salt cerveza. And I chose a beer because if you're at all familiar with this story from the news, you probably know that they got caught by ordering a pizza. And what goes better with pizza than beer? And if you're not familiar, oh, buckle in.
Yeah, we good. We good.
Because there's a lot of stuff that didn't get covered in the news.
Yeah. So what I'm choosing is you actually said this was a good choice, so I'm pretty proud of myself for this one. So, this is something called Lucky Duck Collins. So basically, the reason I picked this is because the vegan, the lady Sarma, who is the lady who ran the restaurant, she had a secondary company called Lucky Duck, One Lucky Duck. So I thought Lucky Duck Collins. So it's basically some strawberries you muddle, lemon juice, simple syrup, some Amaro, and gin. Now, I didn't have the Amaro and gin they specified in the recipe, but I'm not that fancy. Poured in a Collins glass, garnished with some strawberries. You can't really see the strawberries on top there, but yeah, so I picked it for that reason. But it's funny, the picture on the thing makes it look like it's more orange. This is very red. So
yeah, it looks intense, which I guess is suitable.
Not bad. It's very boozy. It's very boozy. Like I was expecting with all the strawberry and the citrus it to not be that boozy, but I think the Amaro is what kind of pushes there. Plus, I didn't strain it because I want all the guts from the strawberries.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So shall we dive into it a bit?
Yeah. So I just want to give I'm going to set the stage a little bit.
Yes.
If you have not seen the documentary, but you're familiar with what went down in the news, this is going to sound like this whole episode is going to sound weird because they really presented it differently in the news than getting, I wouldn't say the whole story because we definitely didn't get the whole story, but getting more of the story. And that's the stage I'll set just in case anybody didn't watch the documentary. You're going to be fucking with those strawberries all night.
And I'm going to be chewing them. I'll be chewing my drink. It'll be great. But hey, I wanted the guts of the strawberry and that's what I got. So anyway, Bad Vegan is set in New York City. Basically, the stage is that there's this restaurant called Pure Food and Wine, which is the most generic, dumb name for a restaurant I think I've ever heard, especially in New York City. The whole appeal of this place is that is a raw vegan food restaurant. So no meat.
One of the first,
yeah, and everything's raw. So it's all the preparations are raw. But it's a very upscale place. They have, mixologists, so you get drinks, vegan drinks. And it is the talk of the town. Like literally it is like a very hot commodity, hard place to get in. Lots of articles written about it. And the owner is a lady by the name of Sarma, and it's Magnolus. I'm going to butcher that.
I think you're saying it right.
Yeah. So, and she is a very pretty blonde woman, very thin and petite, and looks the part. But she is very photogenic as well. So they do a whole bunch of publicity around her, being vegan, and even in the documentary that had Howard Stern talking about going to her restaurant and all this stuff. So it was a lot of like famous people who went to this place, and they talked a bit about some of the folks that went there. But at the height of its popularity, like when she just starts going to make this One Lucky Duck brand, where it's like a different place that serves like, I don't know, were they like smoothies and protein bars and stuff like that?
It's like, your sit down experience, Pure Food and Wine, but your like run through the deli experience is One Lucky Duck, which is on like the next block over, I think.
Yeah, it was very close. So she was, doing this line of food, and it was all under the One Lucky Duck label. I don't think that I think it's more like she sourced the food and then just kind of slapped her label on, which happens a lot, even like grocery stores. So yeah, that's not unusual. And in the middle of it, she meets a guy named Anthony Stranges, although that is not his name when she meets him.
Yes.
His name when she meets him is Shane Fox.
Yes.
Anyway, and he goes by Mr. Fox. Now, he has quite a large Twitter following, who he regularly corresponded with Alec Baldwin on Twitter, which is kind of a weird kind of side shoot of this whole story.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute because there's a whole Alec Baldwin element, and it's none of the stuff that he's usually.
And it circles through the storyline a few times, which is kind of weird. But anyway, this guy manages to start talking to her, and they start developing a relationship online, and and they, quote unquote, like each other. And they decide to meet. And in typical online dating fashion, the guy looks not much like his photos.
Yeah.
And then he starts working on her and, basically makes her think he's like the special ops guy who travels all the time because he's doing all these missions. And there's a bunch of really weird shit he just goes off on and tries it and convinces her of. Like, she falls into this. And eventually how this plays is he convinces her to wire him money. It's always wiring him money, which sounds very weird in the context now, because if you want to send people money, you don't wire them money, you Venmo them or you do something like that.
Yeah.
But this was in 2012 and 2013, which is not long ago, but when you look at the technology, it seems like a million years ago.
Right.
And at the end, she had wired him over $1.7 million to the point that it completely ruined the restaurant and all that stuff. And they end up on the run because the investors were wanting her arrested for taking their money.
Right.
And they do get arrested. And yeah, that is a very, very general outline of what we're looking at.
Right. And the weird part of all of this is, she started this restaurant with another chef that she was in a relationship with. And when they broke up, their investor picked her because she was the more stable bet.
Yes, that's
that
true.
Is like, and to set the stage, she's $2 million in debt to this guy, right? He gave her the restaurant outright in exchange for $2 million of debt, and he's very laid back about how much she can pay and when she can pay it because he trusts her. And that was a bad idea.
Well, sorry, I'm chewing my cocktail. The guy that she was in a relationship with, also a very photogenic guy, very good looking guy, very good looking woman. They opened this vegan restaurant, blah, blah, blah. But that guy was well known not to pay his debts.
Right.
And that was another reason why Jeffrey Trotero, who was the major investor, was the one who picked her, because she was very, and this is kind of the irony of it, she was very conscientious of
the books and
the books and making sure stuff is paid on time. She went to Wharton and then was it law school or no? It was
no, she was going to be like working on Wall Street, I think, or some kind of
financial. Yeah. She was in like financial stuff, so she was very conscientious of money. And then
this guy also went to Wharton, which is like, hey, just because somebody went to the same school as you does not mean you should give them $2 million worth of anything.
No, I get the impression though that Jeffrey Trotero is not a guy who was hurting for money, even with $2 million not part of his portfolio. But that was a weird. I'm sorry I missed that at the beginning with the summation of how they got to the restaurant part, because that was like, and that is just like literally like a side note that they talk about for like 10 minutes and then they move on. But it's an interesting side note, right?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I don't know that it would have went any better with the other guy, but it probably would have went down a lot less interesting.
For sure. It'd have been another failed New York City restaurant, of which there are millions, really. So that wouldn't have been a big thing. So, it is, Jeffrey Trotero picks her. Interesting. And how much of that was due to the fact of her being female and being, pretty?
I'm going to say not much. He doesn't strike me as that kind. He strikes me, and he doesn't come across as anything but a decent guy in this documentary. This is my opinion. He strikes me as somebody who's more likely to be misogynist. Mm-hmm. I think it was, one, that he knew the guy was bad with money, and that, two, the guy came to him first and said,
oh, yeah, that's right.
And I feel like a lot of times the first person who says, you got to choose, it's them or me. Like 90% of the time, it's like, okay, it's them, because they're not being crazy to me right now.
Yeah, and usually if you're doing that, you're pressuring them to try to pick you right away because shit's coming down.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Because the element here is, of course, they broke up and they were still working there and it became untenable.
Yeah. And I think he was the one that actually said, I can't work with her anymore, which, and that's how the ball began rolling for them to split up that way. So
before we get into the next little segment, I want to explain something, because it's gonna become apparent as we talk, but it might be good to set the stage. it does seem like everyone who meets her loves her.
Yes.
Male, female, straight, whatever. It doesn't matter. They all love her. They are taken in by her. Her staff loves her. Like even the servers in the beginning, to work at a restaurant and have your servers think you're great is like kind of mind blowing. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't have any reason to believe that that is just down to her being pretty. I think that she had, some kind of energy that drew people in. And I guess we'll get to our first weird side character, who is, in fact, Alec Baldwin, who was a
Mhm.
regular at the restaurant, and in the opinion of some, may have been courting her.
Well, I don't think that's the opinion of some. He like publicly on Twitter said that he was staring at her. So.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, we don't know if he was just being flattering or if he genuinely wanted a relationship. He's not involved in the documentary at all, right?
Yeah.
So we only have that. But yeah, he seemed to have a crush on her. Some of the people in the documentary said that he would tell her that he was looking for someone to share his life with, and she would deflect and trying to get him to adopt a dog.
She was also in a relationship at that.
Well, yeah, she was still with the first chef, and then he actually met his current wife in that restaurant, and they got married, whatever, and now she's single, and she's like, oh, I guess I missed my chance with Alec Baldwin.
You dodged a bullet there. Sorry.
Yeah,
but then you jumped into a bigger bullet. But anyway.
Yeah. But in the process, she's a very magical thinker, right? Like, so Alec Baldwin brought me my dog because I was looking for dogs for him to adopt, and then I found my perfect dog. And I am partially responsible for Alec Baldwin finding the love of his life. And now this guy, Shane Fox, is Alec Baldwin's friend, and we're hitting it off. And it's all part of this big thing. I think it's going to become apparent as we talk. She's a very new agey, magical thinker. And I guess what we see here is where that goes from being a quirk to dangerous. Because I think that everything is connected to Alec Baldwin because he's a nice guy who was nice to me and all these good things came that are coincidences. Hey, that's not harmful. But I get the really strong sense that when she starts interacting with the Shane Fox guy, she never asks him or Alec if they're actually friends.
Yeah, that's never played out.
They interact on Twitter. That's it. Okay. Well, I've interacted with a lot of people on Twitter. I could not vouch for them. I don't know them.
No.
I've interacted with some pretty famous people on Twitter. Hugh Hefner retweeted me once. He's not my friend.
No.
So it's
I don't think you want to be friends with Hugh Hefner when he was alive.
It was a bittersweet thing that he agreed with me. We'll just leave it at
that. That's cool, but you.
But yeah, so if someone saw that, they wouldn't be like, oh, well, I trust Hugh Hefner, so I can trust Renee. They'd be like, I don't know who that is. So I don't think she ever talked to either one of them about the supposed friendship. She just saw that he was associated with somebody that she'd already engaged in this, every coincidence has meaning type of thinking about. That's really what I think. I don't know if you got the same vibe.
It's weird. I had a dual vibe from her, new agey, vegan, hipster, but enormously practical. Like there's this weird, very practical sense of her business side. She had this very business side where I'm doing my business. And then when I'm interacting with people, I can turn that off and I can turn this. It's not like a dual personality thing, but it felt like she had a switch she could use. Yeah.
Like that she could really, because we don't really know what her spiritual beliefs were in any kind of detail before she meets this Shane guy. But it's clear that it was in that vein. And people said that about her, she's the kind of person you walk in her house, you're going to expect to see macrame and Himalayan salt lamps and crystals, but they're all going to be really nice because she's a businesswoman, and I think they hit on this a little bit without really saying it. I think she says she really wants a big, strong man to come in and take care of things. And I feel like we meet her family. It doesn't seem like she's got a terrible family. She doesn't seem like I think it's the weight of having $2 million of debt hanging over her because restaurants don't make money for a really long time.
Nope.
And I think maybe it seemed like she was never going to be able to pay that back, which, ironically, she gave this guy enough money to have paid it back.
Pretty close to it, yeah.
Well, because she had given, remember, she'd say $10,000 here and there, and then she had a time where she was able to give him a $100,000 check.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like at least $120,000, $130,000 that have been paid back.
Yeah.
She gives him $1.7 million.
Yep. Yeah. We'll get into where that money went, because that shit I have stuff to say about, but because I have a little bit of experience in that realm.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
It's a packed episode.
Yeah. So this guy, the Shane Fox guy, who's not his real name, which we learned he had, I think, 3 different names throughout the documentary.
Like, some people have a name that sounds fake and it's really their name, and some people have a name that sounds fake because it's fake.
Yeah, Shane Fox sounds very fake, and he goes and he prefers like the moniker of Mr. Fox, which is the cheesiest shit you can do. And it's funny because, like I said, there's a practical side of Sarma that I just sometimes realize, like, how did you fall for that?
I maybe because I'm less practical, like the relationship would have never taken off, no matter what he pulled, because you would get so sick of me calling him, okay, fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah, no, he was like, oh, all right, Mr. Fox. Yeah, that wouldn't. If if I was dating a guy and I'd be like, call me Mr. Fox. No, I am not. You are not getting that out of me. Fuck you.
No.
Man.
Not into that.
All right. So Shane Fox comes in and just kind of lays it on her. Like, lays it on pretty thick on her. Just and he's playing up the, like, to me, he was playing up the, look, I got money. Yes, I'm doing this job for the government, and you're never going to know where I am. And I can't tell you. You just have to trust me. And I think that was kind of laying the groundwork for all the shit that comes later, right?
And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail too.
Yeah. Because that's where I think, like, he lay, and it's like, kind of like, if she buys this, then all right, I'm in. That's kind of what it felt like. And I think this is where she's weirdly ashamed of him, because she doesn't really mention him to a lot of people. Like,
well, I think there's 2 things going on. One, and she seems like a decent enough person. I'm going to lay that out. I think that a lot of the really fucked up shit she did was because she was in this fantasy world. But I think she was probably a little shallow, because he presented himself, his pictures, he was buff and big, and he shows up and he's fat, big. And I think that she was like, oh, I thought I was bringing in, another really good looking guy that was part of my lifestyle brand, whatever. I think she was also maybe embarrassed that she met him online, because it seems like she only told one person that, who lived somewhere else. And then the second thing, I thought there was some part of her, I think, the entire time that knew something was off.
Yeah, remember, I don't know if you recall, there was parts of it where he said that he gained weight on purpose to
later.
Later.
Continued to gain weight throughout the relationship. And we'll get into that, because we have to get into why his reasoning, which is, oh my God. Let's start on the crazy spiritual stuff. I think, even before we get into CIA stuff, because it sets the template for the rest of the show, right? So first he baffles her with bullshit, right? He's going to pay her debt for her. He takes her to look at this really expensive condo they're going to buy, and then it falls through.
And took her to Tiffany's.
Yeah.
Like, in this really exclusive, upper part of it.
The Tiffany's, the original location. Yeah. And he's going to buy her one of these diamonds someday. So it's just a lot of baffling bullshit. He's going to pay off her debts, but we got to get married. But the other side of it was he started playing into her magical thinking, which we find out later is kind of his MO. And he's a very powerful entity. because he starts to say he's not human. And that if they're together, then he's going to do all these wonderful things for her. She's going to have untold riches. She's going to, live forever. He's going to make
The
it so
dog's going to live forever.
dies.
The dog is going to live forever. That's another big part of it.
And if you see like the pictures they show and the way people talk about her and this dog, like I think someone even says like the dog was the love of her life. She was just very attached to this dog. I don't want to say in an unusual way because I'm an animal person, but like because she basically had work and at home with the dog was kind of her whole life outside of work.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And he's gonna make her dog immortal.
Mm-hmm. Leon, what a name for a dog!
What a name for a dog! I love it. But yeah, so I mean, he's immediately into this, and then there's the CIA stuff that's like vaguely threatening. But that's where we get into these tests and trials. And I think maybe we'll like jump back to the CIA thing and then get back to that because there's a lot of weird stuff in between. And it's a ride. When we were making the outline, I was like, I don't know how to outline the show.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty good about that. But the idea of like trying to outline how this worked it's really convoluted. It's not like a straight line. Like there's bits of it that are like on a timeline that makes sense, and then there's bits that just don't fit.
I think
squarely
in more than one way,
mm-hmm.
she has crafted a viewpoint, which I think anybody in her position would do. Right.
Sure.
So I think some of the things that are left out are probably things that it's like, I don't want to talk about the stupid little stuff I fell for because it's not important. And everybody already knows I fell for him saying he can make my dog immortal. And isn't that embarrassing enough?
Yeah. Yeah. She even said something to the effect of like, every time there was like this little crazy thing, and if I accepted that, then it just went farther, and then it was a bigger crazy thing, and once you start accepting the crazy things, it's easier to accept the bigger crazy things. And
yeah,
that has some logic to it. Like, if you believe something small, like, oh, okay, well, I can see that, not just the stepping stone to build to something else.
Well, it's that the YouTube algorithm, right? Like they've done studies on this. They have, you can look it up, like in I think Newsweek. Where you'll watch something that to the untrained eye is very basic. And then 5 or 6 videos later, you're watching QAnon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, how did I get here?
Well, but a lot of people are like, well, all the other stuff before this made sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's that. And I think also he love bombed the shit out of her. It's not just the visit to Tiffany's. It was, we've been together for thousands of years through many lifetimes. Even the dog was with us. And, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, honey, there's your first enormous red flag. And I'll admit something. I actually dated a guy who tried that on me. I didn't believe it, but I didn't run. Now I know, like, no, if someone does that, you run. It, like, the fact that you don't believe it and they're laying it on so thick, like, that's how you know that it's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also mentioned to me that this is very similar to a show that I had never seen. And you said it was referencing, like, it was like, this is very much.
That's later. That's later. That's not about the love bombing. We'll get there.
Okay. I thought it was like part of the, we've lived many lifetimes and found each other every lifetime kind of thing. I thought that was part of it. Sorry.
No.
Didn't mean to jump the gun there, but.
Yeah, your spoilers, Doug.
Yeah. Sorry.
So he love bombs the shit out of her, and then he this is so funny to me. He like starts with like by implying he's in the CIA, right? Like he doesn't say it, but she says he's got a computer and that's the background and he has to put a password in. I'm like, I have to put a password in every fucking computer I own. I have a kid in the house. Mm-hmm. That's not special. Like anybody can put any background on their computer. Anybody can set a password. But like, you want to believe what you want to believe, I guess. So she's seeing this and she knows that he travels and he can't say where he's going and it all seems really dangerous. Look, I want to get this out of the way. We talked about this a little bit with the Sarah Lawrence one, right? But one thing I don't think that we covered on that is in reality, there are two kinds of people who work highly classified jobs. There are the people who can tell you, I work for Lockheed Martin, I work for the CIA, I work for whatever. And my basic job is whatever the basic job is.
Mm-hmm.
I can't talk about what I do in the office every day.
Yeah.
And then there's the people who really genuinely cannot tell you what they do for a living or who they work for. Those people get provided a cover story. There is never any excuse in the world for anybody you encounter to say, I was Black Ops. I've had a guy tell me that before too. I was Black Ops. I was in the CIA. I was whatever. And then you go, oh, what did you do? Oh, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you where I'm going, what I'm doing, what my job is. It's like, well, then you wouldn't be able actually to tell me that you're in the CIA.
Yep.
That's not how these things work.
Yeah, I'm not in that stuff, and I know that's a load of shit.
But it doesn't seem to me like she admits she doesn't watch a lot of TV. She doesn't watch a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
She's in a completely different world as far as like, she works in the restaurant business. Like, how often are you talking about like government jobs? Yeah.
And restaurant businesses are like, you are working a fuck ton of hours. You don't have a lot of downtime or free time, especially if you're running a place. You're working 70, 80, 100-hour weeks.
Yeah, and they don't say explicitly till towards the end, but the office of the business is her apartment. So like when she's away, the people who work for her work in her apartment because it's her office.
Yeah. Sorry, the CIA thing just still gets me. I'm sorry. Does that mean? Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's the thing that gets really weird, right? Is that you can tell there's a part of her who doesn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Talks about his military history. He talks about being in the CIA. Sounds like bullshit to me. And then they go pick his dad up to drive him somewhere, and the dad is like, "It's all true," and convinces her of it. And then our first side character, and I'll let you cover this a little bit because I got to experience it twice. Our first side character is his associate and IT guy, Will.
Being an IT guy, this guy, like, all right. So Will, so Anthony / Shane Fox tells her that because I work in this clandestine organization within the CIA, we need to protect you, which means we need to monitor all your stuff to make sure there's nothing weird going into you, right?
He didn't say monitor it, though.
No, he didn't use that word, but that's what it was.
It seemed like this guy was going to go in, encrypt everything, and go out.
Yes, that was the word. That's he used. He'll make sure everything's encrypted so you're safe. So the new character that is this IT guy is a guy named Will. And I cannot remember Will's last name.
I don't think they ever say.
No, they do because I wrote it down. Will Richards. Will Richards. God damn, he makes up the dumbest names. Will Richards.
Oh, you gave it away, Doug.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I jumped the gun there too.
Spoiler alert. Will's not real.
Will's not real. But the great thing about the documentary is they bring in this kind of very dorky looking white guy with a British accent that very much looks the part of an IT guy.
Yeah, and he's like reading, and I said, blah, 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 blah. And
yeah. So he tells her, well, you need to give all your IDs and passwords to Will so that he can encrypt everything and make sure everything's safe. That had my fucking klaxons going off in a way that I can't explain. Like, I was like, don't fucking do that. Like, I was like yelling at the TV, and my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, just ignore me. I'm like having a fit over here.
Like, if he was really in a job that secret, no one would expect his wife to know in the first place.
Yeah. And the other thing is, if he was in a job that secret and he had that many resources, he wouldn't need her to tell him the passwords. They would just get the fucking, they would just go in your system and you would never fucking know. Like, that's.
But it's just like, people, I just can't get over it. It's just it's so detached from reality. And I understand why she didn't necessarily realize that. But these things irritate me so bad because like none of these people lie well enough to convince anybody with even a passing knowledge. So I'm just like, God, couldn't you have like literally spoken your dad went to MIT, is a professor at MIT. Like, he knows somebody. He knows somebody who could be like, I don't know, man, that doesn't sound like CIA to me.
Yeah. Now, but it was her dad was like it's like a physicist. He wasn't like in like computer work or anything like. So it might just be out of his field. Like when you're at like that level of physicist, you're basically like, this is my lane, and I'm very good at this lane. I'm
No, but
not.
I'm just like, I feel like he knows people. Like somebody knows. Like the whole thing comes down to there was some reason why she didn't really talk about him to people,
Mhm.
and I feel like it was either just a gut feeling she had or some kind of weird implication from him. And I feel like if she talked to anybody about it, people are like, I don't know, man, that doesn't sound right. And
Yeah,
somebody would have known somebody who could have been like, no, that's not how it works.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. It just was like I said. Again, as someone who works in IT, I can hear that and just be like, absolutely fucking not. Like, and you can look at something with your background being in the military and things like that, like hearing those sort of things, going, nope, not right. But someone who's a vegan new age person who doesn't watch TV or consumes media the way we would, I could see how that might just be like, oh, okay, well, you're trying to protect me. That makes me feel safe. Remember, she wanted this big guy to take care of her and do all that. And this was a big guy, not the big guy in a way that she thought he was, but he was a big dude trying to take care of her and trying to quote unquote spoil her. And, those kind of things, that makes a lot of people go gaga in their brain. They don't really think things through.
And these interactions with Will were so like it, she's like, I think he's fucking with me. And he would reassure her.
Yeah.
And, it was like this perfect thing. Because in her mind, his dad has said it's all real. This guy over here named Will has said it's all real. I must be the crazy one.
Yeah.
There's all this evidence that it's real. But like to an outsider, it's like, that's not evidence, man.
No. All right. So, like we said, Will, unfortunately, I let the cat out of the bag there, but yes, Will is not real. And that is fucking goofy Shane Fox, Anthony, Michael. I think Michael is the other name he uses, but whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Well, and this is the thing that's interesting is because she starts to catch on that he knows things that he shouldn't.
Yes.
She never puts, I mean, not until later. She does eventually, but in the moment, never puts together like, well, I gave all this access to this guy who he is in contact with.
Yeah, she mentioned,
or why, is it possible that the guy handed it over to him? Or, it just never occurs to her that if someone has access to like your email, your Google Calendar, your phone, your whatever, that they will know what you are doing. I'm sure he had her on her phone.
Yeah, he did, because she mentioned that he would text from her phone and stuff like that. But again, later down the road. But like I said, the Will storyline, and I think the thing you're remembering is the one part where she said he called her and said, "Oh, I see you emailed Adam." Like, I don't know what the name was, but and it was something she literally just like, how do you know? Like, and I wrote, he's fucking monitoring you, you Nimrod. Like, I'm typing a note in the middle of my phone. Like, yeah, he knows all your stuff. Like,
and I feel like he probably like, there's like, you don't have to be like that savvy.
No.
I mean, one, he had her passwords, but like if he had any access to her phone at all, like when she's sleeping or whatever, like there are programs you can put on somebody's phone. Like they're designed for parents, but abusive people.
Oh, and there's other ones that aren't designed for parents, like keyloggers and things like that. But yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like he could have had a hidden app on her phone that she would never be able to find unless she knew it was there, that he could literally like look at her phone from his and see everything that exists.
Yeah, but we also have to keep in mind this was in 2012 and 2013.
Oh, you're right.
So that stuff now, nobody would do that now.
Yeah. Okay.
Nobody would. No, most people would not do it back then. But there were still a lot of people who were not really adept, and that's okay. But like again, watching it now and hearing that, and I was just like, no. Like I was like, what are you doing? But I have to remember this was 10, 12, 10, 11 years ago. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Because I guess like Life 360 and like all those other ones like only really became a thing relatively recently.
Yeah, I am not a fan of that program, but that's a personal thing.
I got a lot of opinions on that, but that's for a different show.
Different show. Not for this show, not for the Coal Bar, but yeah. All right, so we have all this going on, right?
Yeah.
And he's making a lot of promises to her about taking care of her, paying off the debt to her business. And there's a point where I'm not sure why, but she was talking to her lawyer. Do you remember what that was? Why she was talking to her lawyer?
No.
No, but at that point, the attorney like jokingly, like because she said he was going to pay her debts, but he had to transfer money to her and it was difficult or whatever.
Oh, he was like, you should get married.
You should just get married. Like he was like that. And then they did.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to say? I have an opinion about this. There's one thing about this documentary that pissed me off. Okay. There's a portion of this where it's really obvious that the documentarians want to show you that the way she was presented in the media was misogynist, and it was. But then at the end, you even hear the documentarian asking her father, "Do you think it's possible she married him for money?" And this question comes up a few times at the end, and it's like, what story is more likely? Okay, that she is some like craven gold digger who, I don't know, like why would he be talking about money in the first place? But she thinks he has money, so she like manipulates him into marrying her, and then the tables get turned and she gets manipulated. Or is it more likely that the guy who's doing all of the manipulated her into getting married by promising her these things? Like, what's more likely?
Yeah. I'm wondering if her dad was more taking the approach of she was viewing the marriage as more of like a business transaction as opposed to like maybe she was using it not as like oh, this guy can get me out of debt and I'm going to use him. I think it was more like, oh, well, this makes sense. I can just get married and he can give me the money and I can just pay this off and it'd be great. Like,
one thing he said that I think belies what his opinion might be softer than it comes across. As he said, well, she doesn't want to have children, so marriage meant something else to her. And I think, like, you listen to her in the beginning, it's like, well, I think to her, marriage meant stability. Yeah. And also, I'm just going to say it. If you are deciding to marry somebody, you should know what their financials are, and you should know how they deal with finances, and it should factor into your decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not to say that you shouldn't marry somebody who makes less money than you, but it's like, don't get into a contract that ties you to somebody's debts if you don't know how they view debt. You don't know, what they do for a living or whatever. Like it was just like, you can be a practical person who chose to get married because this person made these promises and it felt good without being a gold digger.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't get the impression she was gold digging out of that comment. I got the impression more she was.
But like
but even her, I just thought like seemed like the way she said it sort of flippantly. It was almost like, well, yeah, then it makes it easy for me to do this business transaction. That's maybe I'm being naive in that sense, but that's kind of how it sounded to me.
Now, this is Sarma after this is all said and done, and spoiler alert, she's already gone to prison for it. Mm-hmm. This is not Sarma in the moment being told you should just get married and thinking, well, we have been soulmates through eternity. Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, I think that played a role. It's like, well, maybe it doesn't feel exactly right, but it's going to be okay because we were truly meant to be together.
Yeah.
Or it's possible. Like, I don't know. Like, we don't get all the information. It's really hard to like.
No. And the thing is, for something like this, even though it's 4 episodes, there's nuance you're going to miss. They can't possibly give you everything in this documentary to know what's going on, So, yeah, I don't know. I was trying to remember. I didn't put it in my notes, and I feel like a dummy for not putting it in my notes. But when do we find out that Anthony? When did she find out that he was not that name? Which
Oh,
that he wasn't Shane Fox, because I thought it was like episode 1 or 2.
I think it was episode 2. And because there's this thing that's happening where he is trying to assert himself in the business after they get married.
Yeah, and he's like taking employee files out of the fucking business stuff.
Yeah, and you know, I have this. This has been something that's been on my mind lately, unrelated to this. And when it came up, I just started like my poor husband sitting next to me, and I'm like shouting at the TV, like you with the.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's like everybody was like, I didn't think it was right. I told him not to do it, whatever. But then they let him do it, and I think there's this idea that people have that the person who's doing the wrong thing, if they aren't actively like throwing punches at you, you have to like be cool about it. It's like you don't.
No.
That's illegal. It's shady as hell. Your boss has not told you it's okay.
No.
You don't have to be cool about it. You can say, fucking come back with a warrant. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
just
Give me some permission slip from Sarma that isn't forged that tells me you are allowed to take these files. Like the employee files.
he's
That's
gonna
a
office upstairs. Tell her to come down here. Like, it's just people feel so obligated to like not make a scene, right? And actually, you know, I did some research on this for an essay I wrote several years ago, like it was on the topic of Ted Bundy's MO, because the women who had encounters with him that got away were all the ones who were willing to cause a scene, or someone else caused a scene on their behalf. That's been like it's been documented and whatever. And the ones who he got were the ones who were like, well, I don't know, like I don't want to be mean to this guy. Well, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to be rude. They got murdered for it, and that is not their fault, by the way. I'm not saying that at all.
No.
I'm pointing out like there is this weird sociological idea we have that we have to be polite even when somebody is doing something objectively wrong, and you just don't. If that's one thing you take from me as a person, you just don't have to be cool with people who are doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. But I think also that is like sort of an Americanized thing of just being polite. Like even when shit's going down, like Americans a lot of times are viewed as being very brash and bold and loud and all that stuff. And that is true in some respects. When it comes to things like that, especially if it's happening in like a high-end restaurant where the way it's perceived is like 50%. It's 50% is the food, 50% is the atmosphere and how it's presented. And if you cause a scene in the middle of that, or somewhere where people could see it, that could cause a lot of problems for your restaurant. So like
that kind of comes down to the whole thing that American customer service is its own unique thing.
Oh, very much so. Like the idea that the customer is always right. No, the customer is not always right.
Yeah, I remember being in an enterprise rent-a-car in the UK, and they had this big sign that was like, American style customer service. Because like everywhere else in the world, they're like, I'm here to do a job, you know? Like I'm not going to be outwardly mean to you, but
I'm going to do this and I'm going to be nice. But if you're a dick to me, I don't have any obligation to be nice to you after that. Like there's a whole different ballgame.
There's no ass kissing in Europe. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of ass kissing in Europe, but not in a restaurant. Not in
that fashion.
That came out weird, and I didn't mean it that way, but also
Renee with the innuendo. All right. Hey, so now we need to get to the next character because I want to spend some time with this next character.
I love this character.
I love this character because he is like if you wrote a script and threw this guy and you'd be like, why that guy doesn't belong in here?
Oh, Hank. Have you seen Barry?
What's that?
Have you seen Barry?
No, I have not.
There's a Russian mobster in Barry called NoHo Hank, and he's hilarious. But if you haven't seen it, it means nothing to you. People at home, if you've seen Barry and you know NoHo Hank, this is NoHo Hank with hair.
I'm going to let you talk about him because I talked about Will. You do this guy. All right.
Nazim is his name. And we first hear about him, Sarma saying she talked to Nazim and she told Shane / Anthony / whoever that she talked to him. And he was like, why are you doing that?
Like, you aren't allowed to talk to him unless I say so, I think was the actual thing he said.
And what comes out, they bring him in, and he's this Russian guy who he was working at a restaurant down the street. He didn't own it, right? And he meets Shane Anthony person.
At the bar. He was a bartender.
Oh,
At the
that's
bar.
right. Yeah, at the bar. And they become friends based on something. We don't know what. And then he tries this weird spiritual shit on Nazim. Right? And Nazim's like, dude, I'm a Christian. You're full of shit. Do not talk to me about this anymore. And apparently that's what happens, right? Like, apparently he's like, okay. Now there's a lot missing from this story.
Yes.
Because he is an associate of Anthony's in some way. They're almost certainly doing things that they both know are illegal.
It seems like he's a conciliary.
Yeah. And so, but he's friends with Sarma. But what I find so fascinating is I actually don't think he would have agreed to be on the documentary if he wasn't telling the truth about that aspect of things.
I think you're right.
Sarma said, he's really the only person who knows Anthony. He's really the only person I could talk to. So he knew all the crazy shit that Anthony was selling her. And he also knew it wasn't real. And I think there like hits a point in this story where he's still fucking around with Anthony. He's still perfectly comfortable doing things that are at the very least shady, if not outwardly illegal. Like, he's giving him a ride to somewhere in Florida. And Nazim says, why can't we fly? And he's like, oh, because there's a warrant out for my arrest because I stole a car.
In Florida.
Yeah. And Nazim's like, I mean, I'm from Russia. Like, that's normal.
Well, yeah, he's not wrong there. I mean, like.
No, he's not. But it's just so funny. It's like, yeah, no, I mean, hasn't everybody stole a luxury car?
Yeah, well, the other thing, though, with this thing is Anthony said he had a warrant out to arrest for stealing a car. He had assaulted people. That's what he was arrested for.
Yeah, there was a lot.
There was a lot. It wasn't this, oh, I stole a car. No, you did some really fucked up shit.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Because at some point he goes to jail for 24 hours, then he gets out and Nazim drives him home. Is the story.
Yeah, I'd love to know how that happened.
But Nazim
and that would never happen to him if he was black. But anyway.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the racial inequality of the justice system right now. Let's just steam ahead there past that for now.
Let's just assume that it's there because it is. Yes. Yeah. So Nazim is giving him money. He's clearly getting something out of it. But he becomes protective of Sarma. He tells Sarma, he's recording your phone calls. You need to record them too. And we know that she took that advice. We know it more than likely happened that way because she started doing it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a point at which her restaurant is about to go under, and Nazim basically is like fulfilling a very strange role, right? Like, he is sort of the heavy in the restaurant without there being an imminent threat. And he is saying he would take the money and deposit it because he didn't want anybody to get their hands on the money, including Anthony. I kind of believe it.
Yeah.
One, because we meet all these people throughout this documentary who are just very taken by her. And two, because, I mean, why would you be on the documentary in the first place? Like, if that wasn't what was happening, she could easily say, no, Nazim stole money from me too.
Mm-hmm. The other part that I found super interesting is that Nazim, who didn't get taken by him per se, but still managed to give him $35,000. Yeah. He's a bartender in New York City. Like, I can't imagine you have $35,000 just laying around. Like, and then he was just like, oh, well, like, he didn't like it's. If somebody took $35,000 from me, I'd be like furious and like trying to go to the cops and like suing them or something. I'd be trying to get my money back.
Two things. When I lived in Maryland, I hung out in DC a lot, and there was a bar inside of Union Station, right, that I really liked, and I knew the bartender pretty well. We had a lot in common, and he was actually a lawyer by day and made more as a bartender.
Okay.
Now he's doing environmental law, so not like, not the most high dollar stuff, but like, law jobs pay. So like, I can see Nazim having extra money, probably not $35,000 laying around to just give to somebody money. But here's my thought. based on how little we get to know about him and how he certainly doesn't say what he was doing with or for Anthony. Maybe there's stuff going on with other Russians who
That
do
was
have,
my thought too.
who are fine with things like stealing luxury cars and whatever. Maybe. He's a mystery. He
Maybe he's a member of the John Wick universe and like the first one. Maybe.
I think we both said like we want a whole documentary about Nazim. I want an investigative journalism journey on Nazim.
I don't think we needed it. We just need Nazim. I don't think he'd like hold back if he was just in front of the camera being like, yeah, this blah, 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 blah.
I feel like he very carefully skirted around ever explaining anything that could get him charged with a crime.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But it would be entertaining to watch him do that at the very least.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, like, give this guy a podcast. Yeah, it's like, I know, and I get it. Like, it seems at first maybe unbelievable that this guy is willing to do all this shady stuff and be involved with this person he knows is shady, but feel protective of this guy's wife. But I mean, I've known criminals, mostly petty criminals, but criminals. And there is always this thing of like, there's like a disconnect, right? It's like, well, it's one thing to commit this crime that I get to be at arm's length from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another thing to go to my friend's house and rip them off.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's not an uncommon viewpoint. And I think he liked her and he felt like she was getting fucked over and he didn't like it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, like I said, Nazim needs his own show. We both were like, what the fuck? Like, where is this guy? Well, it's funny. What I think was really funny is you had seen like the first three. You didn't even finish the last episode when you watched it one time. And I was like, how did you not watch the last episode? And you're like, I don't know. And I was like watching it the first time. She's like, holy shit, I missed all. Like, yeah. So, but Nazim, I think that if there was a star of this stupid documentary, it's him. Like,
or the homeless guy. I love him.
The homeless guy. Oh yeah, the homeless guy. I can't remember his name. He is like a classic Brooklyn.
Oh my god, he is
through and through. He's a rough Brooklyn dude.
A black ribbed turtleneck and a black leather jacket and a big silver cross.
Yeah, but not like a cross, like a Christian cross, like the fucking square cross. Which that's not a Nazi thing. It's actually some other kind of cross. It's like a bikers would wear.
Yeah, it's not an iron cross, but it's a weird. He is something else.
Yeah,
and whatever was going on with him, he had a car because that comes in.
And a phone.
And a phone. So. I think a lot of homeless people have phones.
Yeah, I actually saw one the other day who was like sitting there and he had a sign that said hungry. Unfortunately, I didn't have any money to give him, but he was looking at the hungry and he would look at his phone behind a thing. And I'm like, yeah, but you can find phones for cheap now. Like that's not a. So.
And there's programs sometimes, and like there's nothing to say you didn't have a job. It's just you didn't have a house. And this is fucking Manhattan. Like.
Yeah, if you're there, that shit's super expensive. So maybe he was making money, he just didn't make enough, and that's totally possible. And just to be clear with him, Sarma actually met him on the street and stopped and just talked to him.
Yeah,
and they became friends out of that sort of conversation.
Yeah,
to a point where he would watch her dog and like all kinds of stuff. Like,
and I think it's like, I mean, he started crying and they were asking him like, well, what is it about her? And he was like, you know, I won't talk about it. I think because he didn't want to cry more, because he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's super comfortable with that.
No, he even said, nobody sees me cry. Like he was like mad that he was crying. It was kind of a weird moment, but yeah.
Yeah, but she let him store like his winter gear in her house during the summer so it wouldn't get stolen. You know, she did favors for him. He would come and hang out in her house and just talk to her. I think she was very giving to him, but in a way that was more like, well, we're friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wasn't a charity case. I think that's part of what made him emotional, is like they were just genuinely friends. But I think when you live like that, especially in a city like New York, where there's so many other homeless people, you become invisible. And when you're not invisible, it's like someone's doing something for you, but it's really for them.
Yep.
And from what he was saying, it just didn't sound like it was like that. It sounded like they were genuinely friends. And the things she did for him, she did because, well, he's my friend.
Yeah. So that guy, I cannot remember his name, and while he was interesting, he was fun. Nazim is actually the guy that I really want to learn more about because I want to understand him more.
I want them to team up.
That would be that'd be like the weirdest buddy cop movie ever.
Fucking speeding down the New Jersey Turnpike to go get her dog from
Yeah, it'd
Kentucky
be like,
or somewhere, Tennessee, and no rednecks are gonna have that dog.
and just like, and no rednecks are gonna have that dog. And
Yeah.
then he'd be like, "Yes, I agree. We will let the rednecks have the dog."
Yeah,
Like
and then,
two great accents. Like
and
just
someone was like, well, if you knew, like, or is there anything you regret after you met him, like, that you wish you would have done? And he's like, I wish I would have stuffed him in a barrel, threw him in the river.
yeah, like he was not mincing words. He's like, I wish I would have just killed him. Like he was just straight up like, wow. Like, well, he didn't, so it's no crime. But like, yeah, you can't blame the guy.
Better hope that guy doesn't end up stuffed in a barrel and thrown in the freaking harbor.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, you're next because I have other things, but let's hear what you got.
well, we skipped over the thing that was yours. Because I think this is around the time that we find out what's really going on, where he really is going when he's gone all the time, and why he needs all the money. Because he's telling her basically, I'm not taking the money.
I'm just holding it.
I'm holding it. This is a trial. This proves that you're loyal. You're supposed to doubt me. You're supposed to have a hard time with this. And when you do it, it proves that you're worthy. And then eventually, like, you'll be immortal and you'll have untold riches and blah, 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 blah. And I think, at least in the beginning, he thought he was going to be able to give that money back and more. And I guess this is where you come in to kind of give us insight on what was going on. I mean, they tell us what's going on in the doc, but you have a little bit more insight.
Well, before we get to that, I think we should clarify, like, these trials that he kept saying she needed to do was part of this thing called the family, where the family was judging her, and he was always fighting demons, and one of the demons was his brother. And like, it's just this whole ethereal nonsense.
Okay, so we skipped ahead. Let's just do that real quick because you brought up the other thing, and this is weird as fuck. So as we said, she doesn't watch TV. She's not into movies. She had no reason, I guess, to catch on, right? Mm-hmm. So his battle is with the demons and the blah blah blah. And my brother is like opting for power, and we're locked in this eternal battle. And so it comes out, right? She puts together eventually, like, oh, that's the plot of the Thor movie. Oh, this one is the plot to fucking Star Wars. And I caught one. They're showing these text message exchanges, and he fucking quotes Supernatural to her. And so Supernatural, if you're not familiar with it, because I think Doug said he isn't, it's about these two brothers. Their mother died by demon attack when they were kids. And so their dad becomes a hunter who goes and kills demons and werewolves and vampires. And then they come up in it because it's the family business. And he said, I fight demons. It's what I do. It's the family business. It is so, it's like 2 words off from a direct quote from fucking Supernatural. It is insane.
All right, so I didn't want to just gloss past it because this is actually part of how this all works.
Right.
And then that's where we come into my part. But like the idea of like,
I'm gonna let you go first because I just connected a dot and I'm like, oh
my God. Well, tell us the dot. Let's do that.
You want me to information the listeners don't have yet. You got to go
first. Okay. I got it. All right. All right. So it turns out that Anthony is a gambler, and casino gambling specifically. I have insight into this because, as I've talked about on Brothers and Booze a few times, When I was in my early 20s, I had a really bad gambling problem, like really bad, to the point that I spent a year in prison for it. And rightfully so. I did all kinds of awful shit to get money to gamble. I didn't tell people that I was a spiritual being that fought for them over the centuries. I wish I would have thought that. That would have been cool. No, I was just a shitty person.
Like,
But
a better story. No.
yeah, but when you mentioned that you said, I think he had intentions of paying it back at the beginning. Yes. When you do this stuff with gambling, I will tell you from firsthand knowledge, if you take money from somebody or borrow money from someone, either or, your intention is I'm going to win and I will give them all that money back and everything will be good. And it never fucking works that way. Almost never. And you get to a point when you gamble that actually you are just playing to lose. You get to a point where you're actually not even expecting to win. And that even when you get a win, it doesn't mitigate the piece of shit you feel like for all the stuff you're doing.
My husband, he quoted, I wish I could remember who he quoted because it would be very insightful. Someone a very famous thinker, which was that at the heart of it, all gamblers know they're going to lose or they're gambling to lose, something like that.
It is entirely true. But then you get into a mode where you make these excuses and compartmentalization comes into place, which I actually think Sarma did.
Oh, for sure.
To compartmentalize how this was okay. But she was in a different, this was like, it was a different kind of addiction for her. And I don't know how to classify it. But what he was doing, he would say, you need to wire me 40,000, 60,000, 10,000, like all these numbers.
Yeah.
And you need to do this today or they're going to get me. And he kept saying things like, well, you're not going to feel it. I'm going to be the one that's gutted. Like he made it sound like it was a mafia hit. And for this family that was like watching everything, it was all a test for her. And he was the one putting himself on the line for her. So she needed to wire money and she was wiring money out of the business, like out of the restaurant. And she kept doing it and kept doing it. And it was just excessive. But that's because, as Nazim told us, he would go into Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut and just sit at like high roller slots all day and just spend tens of thousands of dollars on high roller slots.
Yeah. So like I know that slot machines are known to be addictive. I know that's why they changed the thing in Nevada, at least.
And in Atlantic City and places like that, yeah, they don't have the pull anymore.
It's one of those things where I feel like this is a disconnect for me, and I'm like not basing this in fact. Like I think of that as old retired people sitting in an Indian casino, blowing their retirement because they don't have anything to do. I think of gambling with the intent to hit that jackpot when I just think, you're sitting at a card table or you're, like something where actual real money exchanges hands on a regular basis. Because at a slot machine, actual real money does not come out on a regular basis. And so it was very interesting that was it. I know he did play cards because she said he tried to teach her, but it didn't seem like that was the main thing because Nazim said slot machines and she watched him do slot machines later.
Yeah. And listen, my gambling was sports gambling. Different kind of thing. Real money changes hands there. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
And that's a different kind of thing because if you don't pay up, then yeah, you're in trouble in a lot of unsavory ways. But the reason he very clearly had a gambling addiction, just the way that he was doing and the lies he was doing, and the lies get more outlandish as it gets worse. And that was for me too. The amount of excuses I would come up with and lies that I would come up with to get money was just freaking ridiculous. And then, it's a different kind of addiction in that it's an addiction, but it's not like drinking or drugs where it's like this physical thing. It is physical because it manifests itself in your body in different ways, but you are not ingesting something.
Right.
So it's a different kind of addiction, and I feel like it's easier to hide, because it isn't like if you're an alcoholic, you have to have booze. Like if you're a
Like,
drug addict, you need
oh,
drugs.
if he came home to Sarma with alcohol on his breath, she would know he'd been drinking. He
Mhm.
comes home to her after sitting in a slot machine all day, and he looks like he always looks, and he smells like he always smells, and he's acting how he always acts. Like, like it's, yeah.
Yeah, that is just like I said. It's the same mechanism for the same result, but it's a different thing that's tickling that itch.
Right. And it's like, I think this is true of a lot of substances as well. Like addiction, so you start doing something because you enjoy it. And you realize you're addicted when you're no longer enjoying it, but you're still fucking doing it. Like, and I think I can see that easily happening with something like gambling, because especially casino gambling, like the whole environment is designed to make you lose track of time and think that at any second you're going to win.
And it makes you very comfortable. Like everything's comfortable, so you don't feel uncomfortable. Like they do a lot of things. That's why they give you free drinks. That's why they give you these
Yep.
very comfy seats. And like there's a lot of things that go into that, like the design of those places designed to make you sit and not go anywhere.
Not
And
up for anything.
yep, and they make it very easy. And like I said, you never see clocks in casinos. That doesn't have a lot of weight now because everybody has phones, but at the same time,
Yes, but I'll say this because I fucking hate casinos. I really do. Like
me too.
I cannot cope with the idea of losing. Like it's just not fun to me unless I know I'm going to win, and that's not gambling. That's like having a job. So, but but I find myself in them because like out here, like a lot of pretty cool concerts come to our local casinos. Or recently I was in uh Vegas because we had a thing for my husband's work there, and we made a weekend of it because there's other stuff that you can do in
Yeah,
Vegas,
there's a lot of things you can do in Vegas that aren't gambling. Yeah.
but you're staying in a casino, so you got to walk through the casino. I hate it. I hate it.
Is it
Absolutely.
is it a sensory thing? Because my wife cannot.
That's part of it.
She hates it. She hates it for that reason.
The sensory thing is part of it, the noise, the lights, all of that. But
Mhm.
also, um it's 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 lit in such a weird way, like the opposite of a Walmart, but for the same reason, right? You go into
Yeah.
Walmart,
Oh, my
so
wife
bright.
hates Walmart's. It's
And
so she hates all the lights there. Yeah.
what time is it in Walmart? It's time to fucking buy cheap shit. And in Vegas, it's dark. What time is it? It's time to live like it's fucking prime time. It's after
Mhm.
8. You're having a good time. Like you have a phone. I have a watch, which I am like addicted to checking my watch, whatever. It hasn't harmed me yet. But I don't
Yet.
have a car. Maybe someday I will, and then that'll be when I need to like do something about it. But if you're in it, and especially if you're on one of these machines where it's just like constantly giving you sensory input, are you thinking to check your phone? Like you have a sense of what time it is because your body has a sense of what time it is based on lighting and activity levels and everything else. And Vegas, at least, and I've been to Atlantic City and Reno, so yeah, like most of these cities, um, you would never know what time of day it was until you walked out the front door.
Yep.
But you got to walk in, sit down and fuck around first. So you could lose 12, 16 fucking hours before you think to walk outside. And maybe you don't even walk outside. Maybe you go to your room with the sun blocker curtains, pass out for a few hours, wake up, and hey, it's still party time.
Yep. And that's by design. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's a few other things we need to jump
Yeah.
on here because sorry for the sidetrack on the gambling, but it is something when I was watching that stuff kind of, yep, I know all that. And just, I could see all the earmarks of what he was in. And that was a note I actually had fairly early on when I heard first about this stuff. But
when his father was a gambling addict too, right? We find that out.
Yeah. But there's a thing where we get to, and this is the part where it starts getting really, really fun, I think, is when we find out about Anthony's first wife.
Because of Nazim.
Because of Nazim.
Nazim.
Go Nazim.
Like Nazim is just like, yeah, whatever, man.
We're going to Florida. He's like, why are we driving by this house? I want to see my ex-wife and kid. And I'm like, what?
And Nazim's like, all right.
Yeah, we're gonna creepily drive by this house in the middle of Florida in the middle of the night.
I aspire to the level of zen that Nazim lives every moment in.
He's like, all right, cool.
So yeah, we meet his wife.
Yeah, Stacy Stranges, which is what his real last name is.
Because she's not his first wife. Because he and Summer cannot possibly be legally married because they didn't get divorced. They didn't cover that explicitly.
No, I noticed that too. So yeah.
That was a weird one too. So like he's a Navy SEAL recovering from an injury.
Shot in the line of duty.
No income, which is weird because the VA gives you money if you get shot in the line of duty. Or any number.
And the dad confirmed this one too. We should note that the dad confirmed this story to her as well.
I've not been shot in the line of duty. I get money from the VA. Okay, like Navy SEALs getting shot in the line of duty get money from the VA. They probably have a lot easier time getting it than I did. But yeah, like why would she know that? And I don't want every time I'm calling out how stupid these lies are, like I don't blame the people who believed him because obviously he was a convincing motherfucker. But some of them are just like, oh my God, I just wish you would talk to one person who had any experience with the bullshit he was spewing, because automatically someone been like, that doesn't sound right.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got an aunt that's going to die and leave him $5 million.
What's that?
He tells her he's got an aunt that's about to die and leave him $5 million.
Yeah, there's that bit.
And he goes and opens like a high roller bank account and opens an account for her daughter, his stepdaughter. Opens an account for her. We're all going to be rich. You're like, well, when did things start to fall apart? And she's like, well, when that money never materialized.
Yeah, and she got pregnant by him too. So
and as a testament to how emotionally manipulative he is, I think this is really important. And I feel like there's a good chance a lot of people watch this documentary and what they see is something else. But what I see, he is so emotionally abusive and so emotionally manipulative that it is impossible. Like, I think we view very serious abuse as like, I had to go to the hospital because my partner beat me up. Very serious abuse can take a lot of forms. And in this case, like he literally, after their baby is born, tells her, we can poison the baby with salt and no one would ever know.
It won't show up in an autopsy.
She doesn't leave. She just stops letting him be alone with the baby. Which, okay, good. You're going to make sure he doesn't poison the baby. But like, I think people who have never been in a super emotionally abusive situation are like, what the fuck? Why? Like, he threatened to kill your baby. But I don't think that was like, I don't think that that's how she heard it. Like, she heard it enough to know, okay, got to protect the baby. But she didn't hear it like, this is a horrible fucking person. He's willing to kill his own baby. Like there's this weird shit. And he abandons her. He just disappears. And she said it took her years to get over him.
Yeah, she said she thought she could fix him. Oh, God damn it, that phrase. Hey, ladies, and I'm a guy. I'm telling you, if you think you can fix a guy, you can't.
He's not
that guy's got to fix himself. And you can help him. You can help him.
Yeah. You can even really help. You can support.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's anyway.
If a guy's that fucked up and you're like, well, I can fix him. No, you're not qualified for that. And I'm not saying that you're not a good person. I'm saying that maybe that person needs to work on himself first.
You're not an asshole whisperer, to quote.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, one other thing we also learned through the thing through Stacey Stranges is that his father, who we've never like the father that we keep hearing that confirms all this shit, was an alcoholic cop who once held his family hostage.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I can't believe I forgot about it. So many things in this story are so off the wall.
And they're little tidbits that just like I'm glad
we don't have time to get into that. Moving right along. Like it's just
yes. And the problem is I took probably more notes for this than I'd taken for anything else because of all these tiny little fucking things that just crop up. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, like that thing was like, oh, he's a cop who abused the shit out of his family and held him hostage and never went to jail for it. All right, that checks out.
And he still has a close relationship with his son, which implies that there's something not right going on there, right? Like if you held me and my mom hostage, I would be like, fuck you. Like, but obviously there's some kind of emotional imbalance, weirdness happening between him and his father as well.
Yeah.
But which doesn't excuse shit for the record. But yeah, she says basically he told her the same thing about they were together.
Cosmic lovers.
They've been together a million times, whatever. And then he started in with the people are after him, ghosts and demons. Here's something she said that really, like, my husband didn't catch it when she said it. It scared the shit out of me. He said, if you taste a metallic taste in your mouth,
run.
That's how you know they're around. Well, he's already threatened to poison the baby. And so immediately I was like, he might have poisoned her, given a long enough timeline. Because it's like, I'm preparing you for the idea that a strange chemical taste will happen in your mouth. And it is dangerous, but it's not me. It's a supernatural force, right? Like that chilled me.
Yeah, I wrote that down and as a note, and I didn't really, I knew that was weird, but I didn't connect the dots until you said that was chilling with that particular thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if he had not already talked about poisoning their infant, I might not have felt that way, but he did. So
yeah. All right. So moving along, because like I said, there's a million little tangents here we could go on. We get to the point where he's adding more tests to Sarma's plate. Right?
One of them is just tolerating him gaining weight.
Yeah.
It's so fucking weird.
So, but he sends her to Rome by herself.
Yeah.
As a test, and there's all these tests.
Do you like those pictures were so weird.
And she goes, and he's like making her fucking send wire transfers of money while she's there. And I think while she's there, she convinces someone like, well, that's before we get to that. That's more related to the restaurant. Sorry. But this is where Shane / Anthony starts trying to take over the restaurant more, right? Like he comes in and he orders like a fucking staff meeting. And the people are like, what the fuck is this guy ordering a staff meeting for?
Right.
And he tells her that he tells them all that he is going to buy the restaurant to absolve Sarma of all the debt. And that everything's going to remain the same, but he's just going to run the restaurant or own the restaurant.
Yeah.
And
meanwhile, they're not getting paid on time.
Yeah.
At this point, they're not getting paid on time.
Yeah, they're not getting paid on time. Which we go farther along that and it gets to a point where nobody's getting paid and they fucking walk out.
Right, because they're like, well, we're not getting paid and she's in fucking Rome.
Yeah.
I can see it on her Instagram. But here's the thing, and I think there was this thing, I think it's apparent from the people at the restaurant that talk about, like, they knew something was really, really wrong. But also, like, hey, I still have to feed my family, no matter what. Like, whatever situation she's in that's causing her to act this way, my electric bill needs to be paid, Those pictures are like haunting. She's alone in Rome, completely dead-faced. Here's me in front of a fountain. Here's me in front of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Here, it's just really weird. But she claims that actually she has pleasant memories of being there because she wasn't subjected to him all the time. And she wasn't subjected to the stress of trying to run the restaurant without any fucking money because she gave it all to him.
Yeah. Yeah. So
She's supposed to be meeting his brother.
Supposed to be. Yeah, that's right. Because he said, you get to meet my brother, which he never does, obviously. So
Does he even exist? I don't think he does. We
they
need him
they never specified. So yeah. The evil brother who is trying to inflict doom
battles.
upon the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
The supreme thing. I also we also learn around this time that Anthony is also talking to Sarma's mom.
Well, he tried her dad first, right?
Yeah, and the dad was like, "Fuck it, get the fuck out of here."
My husband made a good point. Because he kept doing like these really cryptic messages about like we really need to talk. Sarma's not in a good place, and his dad or her dad and her sister would be like, "Well, we'll do that, but Sarma needs to be there."
Mm-hmm.
He thinks maybe, and it's possible enough that he was trying to get a conservatorship.
That
At the very least, he was trying to set it up so that no one would believe her when she talked about what he was doing to her. But I think he might have been trying to play an even longer game.
might have been like a Free Britney situation, huh?
Yeah, I mean, because it's not that hard to do. I think people think that it only happens to people like Britney Spears. It happens to senior citizens all the time. Sometimes
Yes, it does.
people they've never met,
Mm-hmm.
and it's insanely easy to do. You don't
Yes.
even have to have a doctor that has seen the person.
Nope.
So I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
But mom listens, and mom
Start sending the money
to help her in this terrible financial situation she's in.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier that Sarma sent $1.7 million to this guy. Would you like to explain just how much money Sarma's mom also sent to this guy? Because
What,
I
like
remember
$60,000?
400,000.
You're right. $60,000 was one of the requests.
One of the requests. Because he had her mom so panicked about Sarma that.
And this continued pretty much right up until they got arrested.
Yep. So we mentioned that the restaurant, everybody walks out, and that turns into a big thing, like a media thing. And then people are like, what the fuck is happening? And Sarma, to her credit, comes back from Rome. I need to save the restaurant. And somehow, in a span of 3 months, raises $850,000 to get the place back open, which that's some shit. Like if you could raise damn near $1 million in 3 months for a business that closed.
And her like restaurant manager quit because they're crazy.
All of them quit.
No, before the walkout.
Oh,
He
yeah,
quit,
yeah.
Right? And when the walkout happened, he's like, fuck it, I'll hire all of you. And he brought them to the new restaurant. And when she came back, they all loved her so much that they just went back. I think it was like one person who said that, no, I didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
It was the
And
bartender.
I think it was like they believed in this restaurant idea on top of loving her. Like they cared about her. Like they were like, oh, it's Sarma, cool. And I love this restaurant because I love the concept of it. I love what we're doing. Like there was just like I said, it was just they felt like it was them against the world a bit. Like when they were first there. Yeah.
Felt like they were doing something big. And then and she lied, right? To try and keep things moving while she was in Rome. She said that like she was touring possible locations for another Lucky Duck store. And that had an element of truth to it because people had been talking to her about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like, there's a lot, I think a lot of people just wanted to believe in it. But then they like go to Europe together later, right? And then nobody gets paid and they walk out again and that's it. It's done.
Yeah, I mean, we're also getting into like so with the second walkout, it is before that, we also get into this is where the Michael thing comes into because Jeffrey Chodorow is now like, what the fuck is going on? And he still somehow trusts Sarma, but knows he's getting deceived. But then there's this whole thing where Anthony assumes this persona called Michael Caledonia. Again, what what the fuck is this? He's like a bad fiction writer, like with these names. Like whatever. So apparently, Sarma says, I have this guy named Michael Caledonia who I vetted him through some big bank. I can't remember. It was like some big bank. And he wants to take on the debt and own the place, but let me run it. And so Jeffrey Chador's like, great, let's meet. Like, he's like, if I can get out on this debt, he's an investor. That's what he does. If he can get out on something that feels like a losing bet, he's going to try it. So there's a few meetings scheduled where this Michael Caledonia
misses his
misses his flight. Another one where his flights got rescheduled.
No fault of my own.
There's no fault of my own. And Jeffrey Chador, that's a big roller guy. Like, he finances restaurants all over the place.
They were supposed to meet in the lobby of a hotel that he owned, I believe, was it?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. On the beach in Florida.
Yes, on the beach in Florida. So it's like the Chador has a lot of fucking money, but you don't miss a meeting with that guy. Like, that's
he lays out, right? He's like, well, we were supposed to meet at 6. You didn't miss your flight at 6.
Yeah,
you missed your flight at 4.
Yeah.
So why didn't you tell me until after we were supposed to meet? You know, like, he knew something's not right.
Yeah. So he gets to a point where all these meetings fall through. And at one point, Anthony tells Summer, you just got to go meet him yourself.
Just convince him.
Just to convince him. And Chador's not convinced. So he calls the investors, which the investors were the people that came in and picked everything up. And were like propping all this restaurant up. And, you know, the second walkout happens. So now everything's in fucking super disarray.
Yeah.
So now, like, Sarma can't rescue this. What I thought was funny as I wrote this as a note was like they were walking out and nobody kind of knew what Nazim was doing there. And he came in and he's like, I was just trying to help. And they called the cops on me. I'm like, yeah, because they don't know if you're a narc or not.
Right. It's like, well, there's money missing and you were in here and you were taking the money, man.
And you're the one doing all the deposits. What? No wonder they were a little like worried about you. So yeah.
But I believe that he did it. I do. But because this is the thing, right? Is that the level of debt that she was in at that point, it doesn't matter how much money the restaurant makes that week. People are not getting paid.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, at that point, we're pretty well at the 1.7 mark. Like, we're pretty well at the 1.7 mark there, where she's bankrupted the business. And yeah, now we're on the run.
Yeah. So this is interesting because I feel like he convinces her to leave on the basis that the investors are coming for you. And kind of like, look over there from the legal part. And it seems, I think this is true, that she genuinely just didn't think about the legal part until she was in it, you know? Because the investors are like, all right, well, you owe us money. The restaurant's closed and we can't find you. I'm calling the cops. Like, I hated this part of it, because whatever hold he's got on her now, she fucking hates his guts.
She's repelled by the smell of him.
Which I think implies that he doesn't shower enough because, like, I can't smell somebody from across the room. But yeah, it's like they don't stay in the same hotel room together.
Yeah, they stay in 2 different rooms.
And like, there's video and she's like wasting away and she looks miserable and she's like, he's trying to make her get out of bed in the morning and she can't get out of bed because she's so just like, you know, and
yeah, that was in Vegas, where they were in Vegas for like 10 months. Like, when you think of people on the run, you don't think of them in some sort of place like that. I think of them in some little seedy motel in the middle of some podunk town.
Well, but that's what happened when they ran out of money for Vegas.
Yeah.
You go to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Home of Dollywood, which I thought was just a lovely little touch.
It's like, what could be further from the life that she was used to living, honestly.
Yeah. I think it was also funny, like, one of the things, like, when they're on the run, she's like lamenting the fact that they're going to all these places, there's no healthy food. He's just ordering like fucking pizza every night and playing Call of Duty.
In Vegas, there's no healthy food, and then in Pigeon Forge, there's just nothing. And I get it, like, her whole life is based around the way that she eats, like, her every part of her life. her social life, her business life, whatever. And it's like, yeah, like that probably is, it's a little disconnected from how serious your problem is, but it probably is the thing that you're feeling every time you're hungry.
Also, can we talk about the fact that they drove across country twice and another time, like halfway across another time? Like they drove from New York City to Vegas, and then they drove back from Vegas to New York City for a day,
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about the day.
and then they picked up some money somehow, and then they went to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. They went halfway. Like that is an enormous amount of driving.
Yeah, gas was cheaper then, but it wasn't that cheap.
No, but even so, like I like driving. I don't mind driving at all. I drive and I don't mind driving long stints. That is more driving than even I would like to do. Like,
Oh yeah, there comes a point in a cross country drive where you'd literally rather die than finish the
yeah,
drive.
like, can we not do this anymore?
Yeah. But this is the weird thing too, and I guess I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Pigeon Forge has casinos. I don't know if this is true, but I think it must be because in the evening he just left her to her own devices, which allowed her to go make friends with a random guy at Chipotle, who again is just very taken by her. They're like BFFs, and he knows that she's in some kind of trouble. He doesn't know what, and she says she doesn't want to talk about it. And he's like, okay. And they like go drink in an alley with her dog, and they're friends. To the point that when she does get arrested, she calls him up and she's like, "Can you help my dog?" And he's like, "Okay." "Why are you in jail?" "I don't want to talk about it." "All right, I'll get the dog."
Yeah. There are 2 casinos near Pigeon Forge, just for the record. So, but this Dustin is the guy from Chipotle,
Yeah.
and thankfully, Dustin helps in other ways, which we're getting to here very soon.
Yes.
But it's 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 a it's like a life preserver in the middle of this ocean of shit she's in. Like this
Mhm.
person she can just talk to, and she won't talk very specific. And we should point out that while they're on the run, she has a very distinctive duck tattoo on her left
Because of
shoulder.
her company, yeah.
So he makes her cover that up with a band aid, like a big band aid, um, and also makes her change her name to Emma because Sarma is pretty distinctive.
It is, yeah.
So yeah, so it's Emma. I forget what the hell she said her last, like some
But to this
Donovan.
day, when the
No,
cops
no,
show up at her hotel room, she gives them the fake name.
Emma Donovan was in it. Donovan was the last name she used.
Lord, another fake ass comic book name. Like,
Yeah. Um, yeah. So Dustin's kind of this little reprieve from her life. And I think in a lot of ways, Dustin kind of saved her, like just to have a little
mentally, yeah, for sure.
mentally, where she wasn't just completely, because I don't know what her mental state is. She never really divulged that, but I got to imagine at that point, she's got to be fairly close to the end of her rope.
Well, and also we get a little bit of insight because once again, I don't know what it is with these motherfuckers. They want to record everything.
Oh, yeah. Everyone.
It's
He's
so
recording
weird.
all this shit.
And so we have video shot by Anthony of her like sobbing in a pillow, refusing to get out of bed. And just laying there like there's nothing left.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like they get him and they go to get her, and I think it is like the cops clearly felt empathy for her, even though they immediately knew that she was the person, one of the people they were after.
Yeah.
And that's saying something. I don't like cops. I don't think cops generally like show up to make an arrest and they're like, this person I'm arresting seems like they're in pretty bad shape. I feel sorry for them. Like I don't think that's a thing that happens.
No, unless you're kind of a pretty white girl, but
She did not look pretty at
no,
that.
at that point she looked very haggard
Yeah,
because she.
she lost a lot of weight, which,
Mhm.
if you see her, she's already thin. She
Yeah, and
lost
she
a lot of
was.
weight. She wasn't really wearing makeup except for really dark eyeliner. Her hair
Yeah,
was like,
yeah, and her hair was a big thing with like when she was early on. That was like kind of like a big trademark. She would either wear them ponytails or like this really nice do. So yeah, she looked run down.
yeah, I think she like genuinely was not eating, let alone, oh, it's not healthy enough. I think like it got to the point of like, why?
Why bother?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
if we didn't have that video, I think I might have had a different take. I might have been like, yeah, of course this is the story she's telling. But
Yeah,
we have
but we actually see her. We see her where she's very clearly disoriented in the back of the cop car, like when they're talking to her, like
yeah,
she's
like,
not with it.
yeah, they're like, why did you tell us your name was Emma Donovan? And she's like, well, I didn't know who you were. So, but you knew we were the police. Well, I don't know. I didn't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. Well, what's your name? And she says it. It's not like she's trying to hide it.
No,
But
and she's like, no, my name's Sarma, and just like she goes straight into it. So it's like, yeah, I and as we mentioned earlier, the reason they got caught is because they used a credit card of with Anthony Strange's real name to order Domino's pizza, and that led to the cop being like, okay, let's go pick this guy up. Anthony's the first person they arrest, but
yeah,
she's staying in a different room.
right.
And when they're arrested, I think that as they're arresting him,
Calls her out immediately.
like she pops her head out of the room, and they're like, "Who are you?" Or get back in the room, they said to her, and then she
Yeah.
did, and then the guy's like, "Oh, that's the other person we're looking for." Like the cop just recognized that, but I think you're right. The idea, like most cops, if somebody's looking like they're in a little bit of duress, they're probably not going to give a shit.
It's like, oh yeah, you're not the first pretty little blonde who's pretended to be upset when they got arrested. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, but what I think is really interesting about this, and I mentioned it early on, I feel like there's one thing the media hates more than women. It's women who are also vegan. Like we have, like I'm not vegan, but I don't have like, I have a, this sounds so weird. I have vegan friends. Um, I just don't care. And like none of my vegan friends are the memes, like don't worry, they'll tell you that's just not a thing. Like they feel passionately about their thing, but it's not like you can't have a conversation with them or whatever. But the thing is, whenever something bad happens to a vegan, it's either because they are vegan or because they're a hypocrite, right?
Mhm.
So, like, a couple years ago, there was like a news story of like a vegan tried to climb Mount Everest and died. And like, it's because she was vegan. It's like, well, I mean, like, there's dead bodies lining that hike.
Mhm.
Like, it's, whatever. Anyway, so the pizza thing became this huge thing. And she was like, well, it wasn't mine. And I think personally, somebody like, I don't think she was like railing against the idea that it was hers. I think she clarified that it wasn't hers, but
Mhm.
that blew into this thing about she denies it because she doesn't want anybody to know that she's a hypocrite. And it's just like, whatever. I mean, look at her starving to death and look at him who's clearly not starving to death and look at where the pizza got delivered, right? Like, and the cops back her up on this, which is super funny to me.
Mhm.
But the thing I like is the bartender from Pure Food and Wine was like very close friends with her up until like the second.
That shit went wrong. Yeah.
And he's like, who fucking cares? I don't care
Like,
that she ate a pizza.
I
Like,
care that she embezzled 1.7 million
yeah.
dollars.
It's like, can we like,
Can we like focus?
yeah. And I agree with him because it's like, and I felt bad for him in this because you could tell like he understood that she was under undue influence and he understood that she was in a really bad place. But at the same time, like she fucked him over and like it's easy to have empathy for the person who didn't directly fuck you over. And it's a lot harder to have empathy for the person who did.
Yeah, and I will say that it's interesting that the reactions to her arrest when they mentioned that she got arrested, and some of them were very gleeful about that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that because they probably felt like we had this really good thing, and you got sucked into this thing, and you fucked it all up, and you fucked me over, and like, we didn't mention the idea that like when things were really starting to fall apart before the second walkout, or maybe it was even the first walkout, where people who questioned the money were summarily fired.
The restaurant manager, yeah, that
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That so, but like, there was a lot of people that felt like they got screwed over, and
I mean, they did.
I did. Yeah.
And they pointed out too that like some of these employees, it was like their whole family worked there. So
yeah.
no money was coming into that family at all.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting that there was a lot of glee there, but we also need to talk about Leon and his when they got arrested. What happened after that? Because I was really invested in the Leon storyline here with this.
So the cop's like, it's fine, he'll be fine. And she calls Dustin, is like, can you please get my dog? And Dustin's like, of course, I'll get your dog. It's the dog. And then her homeless friend finds out that the dog is being held by some redneck. And he just like gets in the car. I'm gonna go get the fucking dog. And he's like,
and he takes Nazim with him.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And Nazim were like, this will not stand.
Let's roll.
I don't know who this fucker in Tennessee is, but he is not getting Sarma's dog. And I don't know, like
he was like halfway there, and then he hears from
Sarma's mom or dad.
No, dad. Yeah.
Sarma's dad has his phone number. That's a thing. We don't get any information on how that occurred. It's okay. I have the dog. Oh, okay. Okay. Her dad has a dog.
And then they just turn around. So, but yeah, that was a bit of a harrowing thing for the dog. Leon is a very cute dog. Let's just make that very clear. It's a big floppy ear, like, and it's like I think he's a pit bull of some variety.
Yeah, but that like really beautiful, like caramel fawn. I mean,
yeah, and really floppy ears, which usually those things get boxed. Or his tail wasn't boxed. Like that was very nice. That was just like his very cute dog. So I'm glad that went back to her dad at least, so that we didn't have to see a redneck get killed in Tennessee because they had some dogs.
They're like, no, she told me her name was Emma, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna fucking dog. But yeah, the thing about that, I mean, that's really funny, and I think again, it speaks to the fact that like people, this is kind of why I mostly buy her version of events. Because if she were just a manipulative person that got people to like her, that doesn't last. And these were people who were willing to just get in the fucking car and go. No questions asked.
Yep.
So, I don't think that and even like, again, the bartender, the reason he didn't go back after the first walkout was not because of her. It was because he wouldn't be getting paid the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, there is, and they called her, it's in your notes, they called her Sar Mama before this all started going down. Like people just really loved her. And if you are somebody's boss and they love you, like.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. And it's just really wild. And like her other associate, whose name I forget, the woman who's just like, she wasn't getting any of the information about what was going on, and like, the documentarian is like, did you know about the mate suit? And she's like, just gets this look on her face, like, what the fuck? And she's like, I know about Lady Gaga's meat dress.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, so you don't know about it. And she's like, well, no, like, what is it? What, like, it's just like, it's weird, but it seemed like everybody wanted her to win right up till the point where it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
And those people only, I think, gave up on her because they couldn't afford not to. Yeah. They had to pay their bills. They had to eat.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summation of that bit. So, also when they got one little nitpick I have.
Just one.
Well, there's a lot of but at the end, like they get arrested and they're in the Tennessee prison and they're getting extradited to New York to face charges.
Mm-hmm.
And they put them in the same car and the same plane, and that is not supposed to happen.
I think that was strategic. I think that by that point, they already knew that she was saying he was abusive and he forced her into this and blah, 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 blah. I think they wanted to see how they'd interact and see if this was like a story she was making up to protect herself or if it seemed to actually be true. Like, was she we got to get our story straight while they're in the police car together or something. That's what I think. It's super not supposed to happen though.
No, it is not supposed to happen. And that's why I was a little bit like, okay, that doesn't seem right. But yeah, maybe
And he
that
was
makes sense.
still working her. He was still working her. He tried to get her to arrange for his bail. To her credit, she
It,
finally fucking didn't. But
and what he told her in prison, he's like, I got to get out of here and I can make this right. I'm like,
I'll make it all go away. I just need someone to post my bail. Got your
thankfully he
all
didn't.
powerful family.
So basically, Sarma gets 4 months, and Anthony basically gets time served and a little more time, which he was in prison a year when they finally got to where he was
Yeah.
at, which I find fucking ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you why, because the amount of money that I was in hock for when I got sentenced to, I was in jail for 10 months. He was in jail for like a year and 2 months. He fucking screwed people out of a 1.7, well, no, $2.1 million.
Right.
And that's
Well,
all he got. And I
I
got 10
wonder.
months and I wasn't even near $20,000. Like I'm just
Yeah. No, I wonder because so there's a really interesting thing going on, right? Where the chargeable crime is what Sarma did,
Mhm.
but he benefited from it. And I think it's actually a weirdly positive testament to how that court case went down that he got more time than she did. Because the reason
Okay.
he got time served is because he didn't make bail. She did.
Mhm.
So she only did the 4 months where he was in jail the whole time. Because it's like I ask you for money and you say yes, that's not a crime. People lie about why they're borrowing money all the time. So it's weird. And I think it's interesting, like they let his case go through first, and I think that was strategic as well, right? They wanted all of the evidence against him laid out so that when they went to court, that was public record.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So we should start wrapping up, but we have to talk about one last bit. And you and I I'm like, I have some issues. And I said this to you today. I'm like, oh, me too. And it's the last phone call. At the end of the
She hands
documentary,
over. She hands it over. That she personally was like, "Yeah, you can use this in your documentary."
yeah, she gave them permission to do this. Sarma calls Anthony after they're both out of prison. And I am floored by this. That person ruined your life. Like Sarma said, I can never approach investors about a restaurant again. No, you cannot. And it's because of this guy.
Right.
And you call him. Please give me your perspective on this because this just fucking pissed me off in ways.
Calls him, and she sounds really pissy, but like in ways that she sounded when she was still deep in it with him, right?
Yep.
And he's basically like, "I know there's nothing I can do, blah blah blah." And she's like, "Yeah, I know." Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, "But you know, I still love you, and you love me, or you did, or whatever."
And she
And
makes a gagging noise, which is
yeah,
funny.
she's like, and he's like, "Why'd you do?" But he's like, then he says something like, "Well, I know I have to do a lot to prove it to you." And she's like, "Yeah, you do." It's like, whoa.
There should be no proving. There should be done. That should be
The
done.
answer is, fuck you. I'm hanging out. Like, I I hated it, but I didn't hate it because I thought she was being disingenuous at any point in the documentary. I hated it because I feel like she's doing the same thing that Stacey did, which is like I can't let go. I want it to somehow be all right. It's
Yeah.
like it's not going to be all right.
Or maybe it's more like I don't want to feel like I was such a numbskull. So maybe there's something.
Yeah, right. Like there's a lot. I think one way or another, it comes down to like some weird denial, right? Like either it's like I wasn't duped by him and I can prove it, or it's like, and my theory that I shared with you was like maybe what's going on is it's like, but what if it was all true? What if I didn't lose everything for nothing? What if I say, yeah, prove it, and he does? You know, I think there's an element like that's kind of understandable from a psychological perspective, but just really fucking bad practice, man. Don't do it.
Don't do that, folks. Please don't do that if you get into this situation. Don't do it. Okay. So
Oh, and wait,
go ahead.
her unique relationship with the woman who took care of her in prison,
Oh, the mother figure.
the mother figure that she cuddled with.
Yeah.
It Did you get a strange read off of that? Because I got a real strange read off of that.
Well, all right. So again, having been in prison, I will say that there are figures like this, like father figures, male mother figures, who are they've been there, they've been through the ringer, they understand the process, they know, and they sometimes will find people that they will take under their wing to try to help. Now, listen, that idea of prisons getting cold, depending on the prison, that's a real fucking thing because most
Oh, I know.
prisons are in super disrepair, especially if you're in like rural parts of different places. Those prisons are not in great shape because they don't have the funding. And the idea that they cuddled to stay warm didn't, it struck me as a bit odd, but not terribly so because of the way things are.
But that's not that was part of it, right? Like, because
Mhm.
I know what you're saying about jails and prisons, absolutely true. Um, I grew up near a prison where people could just walk off because it was in such bad shape. Like, like I know that that's true, but it was something about the way the woman was talking about it, where it's like it was very much like she was trying to frame it and not like she was just saying what happened. That's the
Yeah.
reason.
Okay. Yeah. I could see that.
And that's all I'm gonna say, because like I don't want to project my beliefs onto it. They're not important. And if I'm right or wrong, it doesn't change anything about like the outcome of the story or who Sarma is. But it was just she's just another one of these people who pops in the documentary and you're like, what's the part of the story you're not telling? Because it's like so obvious that for every one or two things you say, like two or three things are being held back.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know what to make of that. I look at it as someone who did a kindness to her in a
Yeah.
situation where they were like, that woman doesn't belong here.
I don't think there was anything malicious going on
Me
or
either.
negative. It just like with so many people in this documentary, it's like there's something missing in this story that would make it
Mhm.
just feel a little bit more like a whole story.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right. So, bad vegan. Interesting story. Like I said, it wasn't exactly cult, but all the behaviors involved were cultish. So, this was a.
Like believing in immortality, joining a secret supernatural family,
Mhm.
tests.
Giving all your money. Yeah, that's.
We didn't even talk about the possible sex abuse. You'll have to watch the documentary if you haven't, because we don't have time and it's gross and weird.
Yeah. All right. So, let's talk a bit about our next month's episode.
Yeah.
This.
I know you guys have all watched it, so there's no excuse for us not to have just like a ton of interaction on this one.
Yeah. So, all right. The Duggars, which everybody's pretty familiar with, and at least passingly because of their stupid show that was like fucking 14 kids and counting, 15, 16, 18,
I think it
19,
started
whatever.
at 18 and ended with like 20, right?
Yeah. So, uh, this is going to be now. Listen, I watch TikTok as a mindless activity late at night, and the amount of things I've seen on TikTok about this freaking documentary, I'm like, yeah, I didn't realize it was that bad. Like, how did you not realize this was bad? Like, this is terrible.
Mhm.
Everybody knows it's terrible.
That worries me about what we're going to find out in this documentary, though. Because, like, what I know, as somebody who didn't really watch the show, is they're quiverful, which is weird as fuck. They do the Dr. Pearl method of child rearing, which includes putting your baby on a blanket and hitting it when it leaves the blanket.
Spare the rod,
That's the
spoil
thing.
the
That's
child.
something that the Duggars actually are confirmed to have done. There's other shit in the Pearl teachings that are really bad that we don't know for a fact they've done, but they do the blanket training with it's like
Mhm.
you hit a baby, you're not the good guy. Um, we know about the super conservative misogynist politics, and we know that one of the sons is a literal pedophile who's in prison for it
To his sisters
to his sisters, and then he got married and he just like
and
decided he
to
was
his
gonna have a
kids.
million fucking child born. But like it's just that's what I know as somebody who doesn't give a fuck about the Duggars. So what the hell is in this documentary that is shocking to people who did give a fuck about the show or
I
like
don't know. We're gonna find out.
I'm terrified, Doug.
I am worried too. And the
Like,
thing is, like some of these documentaries I'll watch with Jill. I'm not sure she's going to want to watch this one.
I'm not sure I want to watch this one. I don't
I
know what
think,
I'm gonna have. Like straight whiskey is gonna be my drink next month.
oh, hey, I will join you on straight whiskey because I love whiskey.
Just like here's a bottle of Everclear. I'm gonna pour it in my eyes and chug it just to.
My eyes. Yeah. No.
It's gonna be bad. But there's gonna be a lot to talk about, and yeah, that's it, man. I am scared.
I'm a little worried, but I want to find out all the dirt on these fuckwads. So
They're so bad. They're so bad.
yeah, we'll have a whole discussion about quiverful, which I have a lot of issues with in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And in our private chat, I dropped one group that I thought was definitely in the quiverful movement, and you were kind of surprised. But we'll talk about that next month.
I already forgot. Damn. Okay.
I'll tell you in the after show.
Okay.
All right. So, folks, thanks for joining us. Renee, any last words?
If he says he's in the CIA, and I mean, just don't believe him. Just don't believe him. Just don't. He's not. He's not in the CIA, honey.
Also, don't date anybody off of Twitter.
Right. And if he doesn't look like his profile picture, he's already proven to you that he's a liar.
Ramen to that. All right, folks. Thanks again for joining us. Take care.